Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Relearn Japanese, and you are here because you forgot your Japanese and need to relearn it again. Before we start, I'd like to thank all the patrons for your support on patreon.com/maydaysan. Your support goes a long way, and you too can also gain access to quick quizzes, kanji buff, Imagine Japanese, podcasts, articles, and a whole bunch of extra music content as well, starting at $1 a month. It goes a long way, guys. Thank you so much for your extra support. And let's go ahead and get started with today's lesson. I'm sick. So the first one is we're going to talk about learning numbers and counting. Now, this is going to be quite a doozy. It can get daunting if you dwell in it too long. So this is Relearn Japanese. So you should already know most of these. We're just going to go over them pretty quickly in order to not get overwhelmed as best as we can. My light is so bright. Let's bring that down. Okay, here we go. So the first thing we have here is how to count to 10, which is pretty easy. You should know that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? So you can read that too. If you ever did karate when you were a kid, you should know how to read this at least. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Easy as pie. So this fourth one here can also be read as yong alone when it's by itself. And not part of a jukugo, which is a compound word with two kanjis, but also a shi. And if you've ever seen a skit of why you don't say shi, it's because shi means death, and you're trying not to say that unless it's paired with another like kanji, like shigatsu or something like that. But past 10, they're usually read with the Japanese reading. So they, as in 4 and 7. So yon and nana. So niju yon, niju nana, not niju shi or niju shichi. You wouldn't say that. You would say nana, right? So how to make combinations of numbers is pretty easy. So instead of memorizing separate words, you just say ju ichi, niju, niju ichi. 10 and 1 is 11, 2 tens is 20, and 2 tens and a 1 is 21. And then sanju would be sanju, sanju ichi, goju is 50, goju ichi, right? And then you get to 100, which is actually different. So these are probably the most annoying and confusing, and I still have trouble with these because you never really deal with anything past mang in real life, unless you're like a scientist or some shit. But you have hyaku, so this is read as hyaku. We have sen, and we have mang, we have oku, and we have cho. So sen is 100, hyaku is 100, sen is 1,000, man is 10,000, 100 million is oku, and 1 trillion is cho. So let's look at man, which is probably the most important one. So man is actually 4 zeros, or 1 10,000. So it gets a little bit confusing. So when you write 30,000, it's actually 3 mans. 3 mans, 3 mans. He looks like he's a man, just going like this. 30,000 man. So 3 mang, 3 mang. So we also have 250,000. It's actually 25 4 zeros. There's 4 zeros and there's 25 of them, or there's 25 10,000s, which is 25 mans, which is 25 mang, right? Which is your basic salary for any job that you kind of start here in Japan. You're usually starting at 250,000. Plus overtime bonus, which is also put into there, which is a different conversation completely. Oh yeah, and don't bother writing these numbers in kanji because, except for man maybe, and yeah, just probably man. That's basically it, because Japanese language does use normal numbers. Days and months. So first, second, third. Nah, we don't say that. We say ichi nichi, ni nichi, and san nichi. I lied. There's actually specific ones for each of these days, which are actually similar to the generic counters of hitotsu, futatsu, mitsu, and stuff like that. So except for number 1, would be tsuitachi, the first day of the month, futsuka, mikka, yokka, itsuka, muikka, nanoka, yoka, kokonoka, toka. I still remembered it, right? So those are the special ones, and they are similar to those generic ones that you'll see later. You can say ichi nichi, ni nichi, san nichi to like children and shit because they don't really learn tsuitachi, futsuka, mikka until a certain grade. So it'll still go around if you do say the name itself. Also, 20 is not niju nichi. It's actually hatsuka. So close to hatsune miku. So hatsuka. Okay, so let's talk about months now. So this is pretty easy. January, February, March. It's 1月, 2月, 3月, 4月. Sorry, not 4月. Sorry, 4月. Sorry, see how it's cheese? 5月, 6月, 7月、8月、9月、10月、11月、12月. That's see how it's cheese? It's kind of cheese, but it's just things you remember. It's pretty easy. Just 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. When you're talking about spans of time, you add this little repeater kanji in here, which is 1ヶ月. You also have 2ヶ月, right? And then we also have 6 months. So you could say 6ヶ月 as well, but you would actually say 半年. So which is half a year, 半年ぐらい. So about 6 months is usually what is actually said in actual colloquial speech. Let's talk about time. So 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's as easy. You just attach the time kanji, 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. That's it, right? They also use a 24-hour clock system in Japan. So instead of 7 p.m., you would say 19 o'clock. So 19時. 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 Yeah, you say 19時. And basically, if you wanted to use PM and AM, you could say 午前中の7時. But you wouldn't need to say that because that is the original 7時, the original 7 o'clock. You would say 午後の7時, 午後の4時, 午後4時, or 午後5時, 午後の5時, right? So you would specify with 午後, which means afternoon, then the time. But it's probably easier for you to just use 19時 or 17時, 4 or 5 p.m. or something like that, yeah? To tell time, you basically say the hour and then the minute. So 7 hours, 15 minutes. Instead of 7:15, you say 7 hours, 15 minutes. Same thing for like time. So if you want to say hour and a half, you don't say 1時, you don't say 1時半. You say, you don't say 1時半間, you say 1時間半. Yeah? So you can also say this. So 7:30, 1時30分, but you'll just say 1時半. But it might be read as 30 here as well, with the hun kanji attached as well. 7時15分, which is 7 hours and 15 minutes, which is 7:15. Allow me, I am sick today. Okay, so just a minute. So let's talk about minutes really quick. So 1分 is actually 1 plus hun, which is 1分 because of the way you conjugate two hard consonants. And then you have 2分, 2分. Easy. 3分. 3分. When usually something ends in a n, you usually rendaku it, which is to make it softer. So 3分. Then we have byo, which is second. So you can attach that to anything. 3秒, 5秒, whatever. So how to count people is pretty easy as well. So you have 1人, 2人, 3人. So remember, 1つ, 2つ. Those two generic counters come back and you borrow them for people. 1人, 1つ, 1人. 2人, 2つ, 2人, right? 2 people. And then just 3人, 4人, 5人, and you just go from there. So there are many different ways to count things in Japanese. In English, it's actually the same. So if you think it's cheese that Japanese has so many different counters, we have the same thing in English too, but we just omit it because it's redundant language. So like 6 cars. Instead of saying, oh, there's 6, we say there are 6 cars, right? Or there are 6 computers, or there are 7 books. You say, oh, there's 7, right? But we usually omit that in English because it's usually stawaru. It's usually communicated either way. In Japanese, because of kanji and its inherent ambiguity in its language, aimai, we need to express them explicitly. So we have the generic counter, which can be used for almost anything. Yeah. So 1つ, 2つ, 3つ, 4つ, 5つ, 6つ, 7つ, 8つ, 9つ, と. Okay. So these are pretty generic. You can use them when in doubt. Use these. You'll be okay, especially if it's an object that doesn't have a specific counter. You can use these and it'll still be communicated. Yeah. So we have some last counters here. I'm not gonna write these all out because I'm lazy and I'm sick. But write it down, get a notepad. I'm gonna go through each of these one at a time. So nin, what do you think that's for? It's for people. Yeah. The counter for people. Hong, it's not for books. It's actually for long objects like chopsticks, poles, anything that it kind of is just long in general. You could also use it for like film, like a movie, like sambo, like because it's like a roll of film, so it's like a long thing. I've actually heard it used for like turns, like sambome, like it's the third time we're gonna do something. So like volleyball, you hear the girls like doing the the serving, like ippome, they'll do the, oh, here comes the first round of the ball coming in, first row or the first loop. So maybe it's considered a loop. Maybe that's kind of like the thought process behind it. and that's why they use bong for those. It's kind of abstract, so bong can be abstract. Mai can also become abstract as well, ichimai. So flat objects like paper or like cards or something like that, you can use that as well, ichimai. Satsu is specifically for books, so it looks like a book. Yeah, we have piki or hiki, which is used for small animals, not a big animal, small animal like a mouse or a rabbit. So ippiki, nihiki, sambiki, yonhiki, right? Then we have sai, which is age. It's easy. I'm gosai, pokuwa gosai da ya. Then we have ko, which is small object. This is also another generic one you can use, usually just for small round objects. I wouldn't use it for something big. If you wanted to use that, you would use the tsu, the generic marker. But you usually want to avoid the generic marker for like animals and like living things. It's funny because you also hear animals be used like futari. You also see the people thing used for animals as well sometimes. You'll have to like look for specific examples of that. Like usually if you watch like a zoo, you go to the zoo or something and they treat them like they're really like close with the animals and stuff, they'll treat them as humanish. So they'll say like futari wa. They won't say sanhiki or sanbiki or whatever. And then we have kai, which just turns. So that's just a revolving circle. I guess they didn't have circle chisels back in the day, but that just means turn. So ikka, nikka, how many times you've done something. And that's basically it, guys. Thank you so much for coming out to Relearn Japanese, episode 27. Your boy tried really hard this morning to make this for you guys, and I'm sick, so I'm sorry for any of the mistakes or stuff I might have done today. But I hope you still learned something useful. Take some time to look over it. And of course, if you are a member on Patreon, you will get the quick quizzes for starting at $1 a month. Supporting the channel to get a lot. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you next week.